My name is Edith Juguna, and I manage the Illinois 60 by 25 network on behalf of the three network organizers, Advance Illinois, Education Systems Center at NIU, and the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. And we provide webinars on topics that are of interest to communities. And we've been hearing a lot of interest in trauma-informed practices, especially in light of COVID-19, racial unrest, and adjusting to remote learning. So thank you all very much for being here. I know this is a very busy time for everyone, and we're looking forward to the conversation. So you will be able to ask questions using the Q&A, and my colleague Emily will be monitoring those. And we are also recording the webinar, so the slides and the information will be available after the presentation. So in terms of our agenda for today, the goal is to learn about how two communities in the network are implementing trauma-informed practices in partnership with the Illinois Federation of Teachers and other community partners. And we'll have an opportunity to learn about the communities and the school districts in those communities, and you'll receive resources and hear about lessons learned and adjustments that they've made in light of COVID-19, remote learning, and racial unrest. So we are really fortunate to have presenters from two school districts, East St. Louis, District 189, and Township High School District 214. You have the names of the presenters there. So Barb Oughton, Dr. Tiffany Golson, and Wyvetta Granger from East St. Louis District 189. And from Township High School District 214, we have Jean Airy and Ray Galarza. And now we're going to go ahead and get started with East St. Louis.
Good afternoon and welcome. Dr. Tiffany Golson, Wyvetta Granger, and I will share how we have implemented trauma-informed practices and supports for students and citizens of the greater East St. Louis community. Our city's population is 97.1% African American. We have a homeless rate of 5.9%, 0.9% English language learners, high poverty with 64.1% of our children living below the poverty line. We have a high per capita of violent crime and homicide. Most dangerous city in America by multiple sources. Our students have numerous adverse childhood experiences, incarceration, domestic violence, medical conditions, housing challenges, single parent homes, and grandparents as guardians are among those challenges. During the summer of 2017, the Illinois Federation of Teachers contacted the East St. Louis Teachers Union and East Side Align. Together we met, and they introduced us to a two-day curriculum that would allow participants to learn the core elements of how to respond to trauma and foster healing. The local union met with the district leaders and devised a plan to bring the training to all its employees. In February of 2018, a 3-day Train the Trainer training was held. Each school building sent a team of 4 people, an administrator and 3 union members representing various positions for the training. Beginning in April of 2018, the training for district employees began. Utilizing school improvement professional development days, all employees were already required to attend for the school year. Our goal was to ensure that all employees who come in contact with our students throughout the school year received the training, and in the end, over 540 people within the district participated in the original training. We are still working together to bring the training to new employees in the district. The training began with a readiness assessment. We moved on to a definition of trauma, sources of trauma, risk factors were discussed, and the term adverse childhood experiences were defined to all the trainees, along with how the number of ACEs impacts the brain, learning, the ability to have and hold relationships, and the future health of people that have had these adverse childhood experiences. We learned about triggers, and that when a person is triggered, they're in this fight, freeze, or flee state. And that when they're in this state, they cannot be reasoned with. They just can't. The brain has shut off to protect the person or the child. The next module of training we went through was the training of hope. It showed us how children can heal and thrive. And through a combination of protective factors, having at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult, and through some very simple everyday gestures by anyone, they can heal. Another module had us explore the importance of self-care and to also be aware of our own personal triggers. The training continued with examples of trauma-informed school communities. We looked at the historical trauma with race and intersectionality was also studied. The next part of the training focused on building a trauma-informed community, which included effective behavior management, restorative justice, and most importantly, changes in perspective. No longer saying, "What's wrong with you?" to saying, "What happened to you?" The goal now is to encourage and promote. We're no longer reacting and using punishment. The training highlighted current changes within different systems and other changes that still need to occur. But the end product of the training was a building-wide plan created by participants to transform our learning community into one that utilizes effective trauma-informed practices. During the school year following the training, adults felt empowered and part of a positive change. They quickly moved to using the restorative practices. In our building, office referrals went down and our school suspension rate dropped. Self-care became a priority among administrators as well as staff. We're checking in on colleagues and allowing them to tap out when needed without judgment. We also developed a check and connect plan where every child in the building had one adult, two adults, three at their choosing that they could check in and connect with at any given time. Eastside Aligned is a youth-focused collective impact effort in the great East St. Louis community. School District 189 is one of the partners in this movement. Many community residents, young people, and stakeholders together developed the roadmap, which is a set of priorities and a shared agenda to focus on. This includes that all children and youth feel and are safe. Our trauma work stems from this priority and Eastside Aligned roadmap. Again, in November of 2018, we all teamed up to present to the broader community of Eastside Aligned's annual rally, Working Together with Youth. We had over 72 participants from the community. We highlighted what trauma was, how it affects the brain development, relationships, learning, and health, and how we can heal and thrive. The response from the community was overwhelmingly positive, with suggestions on how we need to push the training out to other groups within the community, including training students so they can conduct peer-to-peer training. The response from the community, once again, was great. All right, thank you. So Dr. Tiffany Goldstein will now continue our story.
Hello, good afternoon. I am the Director of Parent and Student Support Services for East St. Louis School District. And ultimately, when you saw the first stop slide, I was brought in to tidy up and bring cohesiveness to that work. We know that if a child is focused on survival, they're not focused on education. We understand that we have a lot of trauma in our community, and basically providing social emotional supports is what we put into place to mitigate some of those effects. Trauma-informed practices for us means that we describe it as a framework that involves understanding, recognizing, and responding to the effects of all types of trauma. And we do that by our social emotional work. This slide, you can see somewhat, you can get an idea of the work that we do. We know that many of our students have adverse childhood experiences, which we all are aware of, but we also know that in our community for sure, that our students also suffer from adverse community environments. And many of our students are living within that. And social SEL work helps counteract those ACEs and is a lifelong skill that we want them all to learn. We practice positive and ongoing school, family, community partnerships. We push SEL work as curriculum and instruction, and we constantly evaluate our work and efforts. We also use youth voice to share and co-lead the work into creating more and healthy environments for them. So some of our sustainability efforts that we've done in our district to continue this work. We have SEL specialists or social emotional learning specialists. They're very much like content area specialists, and they push into the schools and the classrooms providing the SEL work. They monitor our curriculum, which you'll see on there. Our SEL curriculum is Ripple Effects, which is nationally recognized as an evidence-based, culturally responsive SEL curriculum. They push in, they provide data, resources, supports for teachers to infuse SEL work into their academic lessons in classrooms. We also have a social emotional learning lab at our Family and Community Engagement Center. So in our lab, it is a teaching place for teachers as well as parents to come and learn some techniques. An easy one is Jenga, and using a Jenga game, the wooden game, but to write your own questions on them. You can use that to build rapport, to build relationship skills for self-awareness, etc. We have hired additional support throughout the building as we look at the whole child. So we have additional school nurses, we have additional social workers, and then our behavior interventionists and our in-school suspension staff all are trained to do this work together, as well as our truancy, homeless, and foster care students or children in foster care. We do have a SEL web page, and that is primarily for our staff, but it is for anyone that wants to go for more resources and understanding about PBIS work, ripple effects, and more. And that link is in the resources. We do use Youth Voice. We have Peace Warriors. It was a program that began in North Lawndale Prep in Chicago that a nonprofit here, Joining Hands, brought to East St. Louis, and we have chapters, so to speak, in East St. Louis and surrounding areas. I did provide a link for that to you as well. Our Family and Community Engagement Center we use as a place, knowing that our students can't just get this information during the school day because they're home and in the community for more hours of the day. And so we have Parent University and events where our parents learn this social emotional work as well. We have about 15 school-based partnerships where community partners come into our school to provide social emotional support, mental health support, substance abuse services, et cetera. And one of the biggest parts of that is to keep up with the social emotional data and evaluation, so we know where we've come and where we need to move next. We've been doing this work in earnest for the last 4 years and collecting the social emotional data. What we found is that though our kids are suffering and struggling in many ways, that we have one high school, we lost 7 of our high school students in the 2018-2019 years, 6 of them due to violence. And in the 1920 school year, we lost, besides a 4-year-old, the last 4 students we lost were all middle schoolers. And so looking at that data, we knew we needed to do something more, and we weren't quite sure what that was. I realized that we weren't losing our students during the school day, and we weren't losing our students at school. We were losing them in the community, in the evening, at night, on the weekends. So what we're literally putting into place now is the Wraparound Wellness Center. We will be launching pretty much what we're doing now in the evening hours and on the weekends. We will be open 7 days a week. We will have a social worker that will move between the school district, the evening center, and the juvenile detention center. Because what we've also found out is that the majority of our victims that were killed have been past perpetrators, not all. And so we want to insert violence interruption services in those places. We want to provide services to anybody experiencing trauma. And so we are now going to have a trauma response team that will go out from the hours of 4 p.m. to 4 a.m., 7 days a week for anyone 21 and under in an incident that involves serious injury or death. And we will provide services on site with support, with education, with how maybe seeing a dead body and allowing a child to see a dead body will cause, and the effects that that might cause later on that you might not attribute to it, and those outreach services. If any of those students belong in our East St. Louis School District footprint, we will attempt to bring them in and provide wraparound services to the whole family, knowing that we cannot target one individual in that household. And so through our community partnerships, through our youth voice, we will continue to push out the message of the impacts of trauma and how we can mitigate it and how we can move forward. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wyvetta Granger from Community Lifeline Family Resource Center here in East St. Louis, and I am just excited to be here with you again today. I'm going to just talk about, again, just what is happening in the community from a community approach. The First Stop plan, as they've talked about earlier, laid out 6 core strategies, and it was building on the trauma response for the community, and that was the forefront of our plan. If you can't, so when we look at this First Stop plan, you will see that over 1,000 people have currently been trained through this plan from the school district, from youth development professionals, and from resident and community stakeholders. So you can advance the slide one more time for me, actually, yes. And then one more time. One more time. Yes, okay, all righty. And so again, what we did, go back one, I'm sorry. Thank you. What we did was in this collaborative, what we started doing was to notice other ways that we can engage the community. So these are some of the organizations and civic organizations that we brought together to go over the plan. And these organizations were trained in the trauma response and learning. And so this was our way of, again, trying to get the work out further than just the schools and further out into the community and to organizations which we serve. So there were about 12 other organizations that came together and that were trained in trauma-informed practices and learning. Through this work, this is where Community Lifeline, which is the next slide, comes into play. From the time of 2016 to 2020, we implemented the L.I.V.E project, which was Lifeline Interrupting Violence Through Engagement. The L.I.V.E project was to bring community awareness and to do an impact on violence, foster community cohesiveness, and then to engage the residents of our community with conflict resolution skills and how to reduce and lower peer retaliation. So when we look at the L.I.V.E project, which is the next slide again, the L.I.V.E project, again, when we look at this, there was 5 key components that we like to look at when we're addressing the L.I.V.E project. The L.I.V.E project, it addresses youth violence, domestic violence, and community violence. So we host things like community trainings and workshops, such as anger management, de-escalation, conflict resolution skills, but we also assist the clients through crises and situations by offering what we would call a hands-on approach. So a lot of times we found that when people, residents in our community, just for instance, let's say if there's a gunshot wound, it's not that the gunshot was actually life-threatening, but it was the lack of response to the gunshot that again left where the person might have lost their life. So we've implemented things like CPR training throughout the community, wound care, which is popularly known as Stop the Bleed training. And then we've Narcan, we found that a lot of overdoses were again on the rise in our community. So we started offering Narcan trainings and then offering Narcan in our community for our residents to be engaged in. We also did some case management skills, case management trainings. And through this is where we get to interrupt and deter violence within families, because a lot of the violence that we saw in our community, again, was pure retaliation. In our case management sources, we start offering behavior support, counseling, housing referrals, job readiness skills, and mentoring. And these are just some of the ways that we work to move things forward and then to help and to engage families throughout our community. You can move to the next slide. The next slide, I'm sorry, where'd it go? Okay. The other things that we do is the community outreach and response. So in community outreach and response, this is where we build teams together. And again, the whole key is to interrupt violence. And through this community outreach and response, we are just trying to provide just a chance for them to talk through the problem. Again, try to prevent any retaliation, to offer support for those who are in the crisis, immediate support for those who are facing crisis, and to be able to really work on what do we need to do as a community to help de-escalate the violence and the possibility of retaliation. Community building and organization. We have a block party, neighborhood block party trailer. And again, we believe that, again, when we knew each other, when our neighbors knew each other, we were more amped and we were more likely to respect each other and work together. So this is our effort of being able to re-engage our community, to take those spaces that have been used for traumatic occasions and try to reclaim them and make them ours again. So this is where the community has to get involved, and they have to work together as a neighborhood to be able to have a neighborhood block party. And this is our way of just making sure that our community starts to re-engage across the generations and across the lifespans, in hopes that once we know each other again, we will be more willing to just reason and talk things out without just all the violence being at the forefront of the community. Victim support. It is our goal with our victim support that we use this as an opportunity to leverage not only our community outreach opportunities, our case management services, but to meet the victims exactly where they are. We find that a lot of times when victims are going through, they need counseling, they need just somebody to talk to and to re-engage with, or to help support them through the trauma that they've faced. And so again, we try to walk them through whatever they deem as their plan toward the healing process by offering, sometimes it's grief counseling, sometimes it's just a grief support group where they can get to talk through their cases. And then we offer a thing called participatory defense, where they actually put together a statement about who their relative is, so that law enforcement or those that they're going to engage will know truly who their loved one is. And that is, again, I believe all that we have. So one more slide. Yeah, that's all. And this is a list of the other resources that we've included for your your needs. And we are here to answer any questions when the time comes.
I'll just share that although there are no questions so far in the chat box, there's a lot of praise for the work that you're doing and how comprehensive it is.
Thank you very much to Eastside, to the team from East St. Louis. And now we'll move on to District 214 in the Northwest suburbs. And there will be time for questions at the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much. My name is Jim Airy, and I'm a social studies teacher here at Elk Grove High School. I'm also the District 214 Education Association president. I'm also Local 1211 vice president for community engagement, and I'm American Federation of Teachers national trainer. Ray?
Hello, my name is Ray Galarza. I am a social worker at Elk Grove High School in District 214. I've been here for 4 years. Before that, I was at another high school within our district for 8 years. And I'm also trained with Jim as a trauma informed trainer, train the trainer.
And I think Barb and Tiffany and Wyvetta really showed you what a community-based approach is, and it's outstanding. Our story is a little bit different. It's more from the ground up, particularly in how the current events have really opened this up to where we're having more dialogue now from the top down. So some fast facts for you about our district. High School District 214 is the largest high school district in Illinois. We have 6 high schools and 1 specialized schools with 6 programs involved. So we're talking about, we probably have about 2,000 staff, and on any given day, about 12,000 to 12,200 students, grades 9 through 12. We serve about 300,000 residents in a 68.3 square mile, of which Elk Grove Village, known as the exceptional community, has probably one of the largest industrial parks in North America, which fuels a lot of the funding for the District 214 schools. Next slide. Here's just a brief snapshot, and you could see district per pupil expenditures, 21,000, graduation rate 92%. You can probably, see for yourself in terms of the affluence of a lot of the different areas that feed into District 214. Student mobility rate 7%. Ray, anything you want to add on the district snapshot demographics?
The district is really unique in the fact that we have students that come from homes that are probably worth over $1 million to 6 different mobile home areas, 6 different mobile home areas that Elk Grove serves 4 of those. So we have a wide range of different areas and different SES.
Thank you, Ray. Next, please. So what does it look like for a trauma-informed approach practice to take hold in an entire school district? I have to tell you, our journey goes back to about, with the SB 100, the discipline reform, where teachers were kind of questioning, maybe asking the question, well, where's discipline these days? And there was a shift made. And so this really started the conversation. And then it was really staff initiatives that developed a lot of these programs. We started really with the viewing of the paper tigers, optional professional development for staff to meet in the mornings. And from that, it just kind of built over a 4-year period. We have a collab lab where we have time built into the day for teachers to get together prior to the school day to share resources, come together in this space to be able to really bounce ideas off. And it was there through these discussions where we started to really pick up. And I think Barb did an excellent job talking about the training then, the unions with the Illinois Federation of Teachers, as well as the American Federation of Teachers, bringing into staff members. And it was that the summer after where then we became trained, and we brought a team from Elk Grove. Ray was part of that. And then we established the training. And what's interesting about, and I think one of the key parts of the trauma-informed training that the union brought in is it's so comprehensive. Not only does it talk about trauma, but also talks about resilience. We're talking about getting into historical trauma, race, intersectionality, which I think is the key part of a lot of the work that we do, staff wellness, whole community schools. So each of the modules are broken down. And it was really that moment where you said, wow, here's all the things we've been talking about: discipline, wellness. How do we push in the social and emotional well-being in this trauma-informed piece, at the same time increasing your literacy rate. So this is kind of the approach that we met. And then people really from the grassroots up started to do staff-led initiatives, from a program designed, the sophomore leadership cohort that I currently teach, where we combine English, social studies, and physical education with some push-ins from our student services, including Ray and our social workers. Mindfulness Wednesdays that we were starting to do with staff to really promote that wellness. And Ray, real quick, Snowball, that was a pretty big piece that you inserted in 2 years ago, correct?
Yes, so I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with Snowball, but it's an SEL-based program that is really prevention-based for alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. But when you really peel back the layers of it, it's more about building relationships. It's really preventative in that aspect. So it really seeks to build that relationship so that the students won't engage in risky behaviors versus having to deal with the treatment of students that have already engaged in risky behaviors.
And what's interesting, it's held on a Saturday, and the support now of staff and the students and the energy that's built up just in 2 years. Ray, your original numbers on that first year, and then
36 and 100 on the next year.
so it just keeps growing. But I think it's important, as you saw in District 189, they started with the training first and then use that and move that out into the community. Whereas, think of it like people working in their own ideas, developing that up. And then from that, we did a community training, community solution to student trauma. And we're also partners with District 211 in the 5 comprehensive high schools in that district. We're all part of the local 1211. And we did a community training with our sister school, Conant High School, Elk Grove. We brought in Amita Healthcare as a presenter, Kenneth Young Centers, which deals with social emotional wellness, and then the Elk Grove Police Departments, Hoffman Estates, and students. We invited parents, and we invited educators and administrators to this comprehensive training that we did off-site, really to start having this conversation of what it's going to take to build this community school concept. And from that, we then went and launched other training programs with Hoffman Estates and Rolling Meadows. And our goal as a local was to provide this training to all of our schools in District 214 and 211. Unfortunately, with COVID, that's put a crimp in the plan here, but we have developed in the AFT level a online training program for trauma-informed strategies to be used online. So I'll be happy to share those resources. But I think from this, we're starting to build those community partnerships. And the goal here is to expand that using the resources that we have, and take Elk Grove's model and then hopefully replicate it in the other schools in District 214 and 211. And then I think the critical piece, particularly now in the age of COVID, is workplace wellness, the health and well-being of your staff. And fortunately, we've had some programs already in place so that we can then take this out on a whole school level. So, I think the partnership is interesting. We mentioned it started with staff, kind of moved to the union. In my role as vice president for membership engagement for the local, we were able to then get buy-in from the union, and then trying to partner with the district. So, and now with all of the changes with COVID-19, remote learning, racial unrest, we're seeing more of a opportunity now to work with the district from now a top-down approach. So this year we've been able to incorporate a district-wide Institute Day, which the focus was on the curriculum from the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion. We have that online curriculum, as I mentioned, through the AFT on 10 trauma-informed strategies to help students heal. We have weekly professional development threads that we were able to negotiate with between the union and management to be able to get this in on a regular basis. And obviously the partnering up with AFT and the programs they're running on community schools. Their program on Community Schools Network is outstanding. and we've been part of that. And then we're trying to implement a parent-teacher home visit program between a union partnership with us in the district. And then Ray, I know the district's going to be offering internal university credits, which you'll be instructing, as well as equity groups. Would you mind talking on that a bit?
Yeah, so there's going to be 2 classes that we're going to be starting in the spring. One is going to be a trauma 101. So it's pretty much the same information that we're going to be learning when you get into the trainers for trauma informed, but for the teacher approach, so that they know kind of like what are the signs, a lot of things that were like covered by East St. Louis as well. And then the other class is going to be restorative practices and also a 101. And what that's going to be, it's more of like, hey, you just took the class trauma and you know that it exists, you see the signs, but what are we going to do about it? So with that, we're going to take the kind of like the push as far as restorative practices, which encompasses way more than just circles. For those that kind of just think it's just about circles. So it encompasses a whole lot more. And that's really kind of the approach that we're going to hopefully move forward with. And those are the classes that are going to be in. I guess moving on to that last, to that bullet point. There is inequities. There's racial unrest. It's always been there. It's just been moved to the forefront due to the murder of Mr. George Floyd. And as we know, though, out of tragedy can come hope. And what kind of sprung out in the summer were a large group of teachers. And basically, we got together to really kind of look at the holistic approach of District 214 and how we were approaching and handling inequities. And out of that, we petitioned through a manifesto. We went to board meetings and we discussed our plans with our superintendent. And at this point, we are moving forward, and we've gotten a couple of things that that came out of this kind of group. We began some equity trainings that we're giving once a week, which are mandatory for all EA members, which is our first initial steps. We are looking at hiring a director of equity and diversity, and that should be in place by the second semester. And we're looking at bringing a lot of professional speakers to do PD, and that will be continuous along the school year. This group currently meets once a week to kind of talk about our progress that's being made, or the lack of progress that's being made. And then we report directly to the superintendent, who is on our side and is moving and helping us push forward with all this. So.
Outstanding. Thank you, Ray. And I think, you know, the key here is how do you get this now into the classrooms? Because here's where the work really has to take hold. And if I can get the next slide, that'll be great. Now, I mentioned earlier that, you know, bringing this into the classroom, we integrated, at least at Elk Grove, we were able to put together social studies, English, and a physical education course, combine them into a 3-period block. And myself, Kristen Lesniak, Samir Chaudhry, and then again, we had support from Ray and Amanda, our social worker, and education support personnel to really take a systems approach to educating the whole child, where we can combine SEL, ACEs, a trauma-informed approach, with literacy being the key factor here. So those intersections, if you have the source I'm putting up here, the Literacy Organization Capacity Initiative at NORCA at University of Chicago put together an outstanding short resource, but it really talks about how you take the systems approach. And, you know, what better way than to bring this into the classroom? So the intention of this program is academic as well as non-academic strategies, bringing in the community, as well as us going out into the community. And as a result of these partnerships, we have field experiences with the police, the fire department. We kind of switch off. We have public service practicum, that would be exposure to local government officials for the purpose of kind of, you know, understanding in today's politically charged environment, not everybody in public service is a criminal. So what better way than to get them embedded in there, and as well as address some of the community issues. And then part of this is citizenship development through volunteer community service. So if you could integrate the curriculum, make literacy the initiative, but bring in these experiences that are hands-on, real world, we can address some of this. Before COVID, we were looking at what do you do in the event of a traffic stop? And our kids were going to be working with the Elk Grove Police Department to film that video, because certain, depending on what communities you're brought up in, you're trained a different way. Well, you bring that to the attention of students, it's like, really? But then have them go out and then create that, and then use that finished product as a piece to be able to now use for your driver ed programs, or for general information that not all things are well. So another great resource, and I firmly believe that if we're going to heal and trauma informed, and I love the approach Dr. Ginwright states in the future of healing, shifting from a trauma informed care to a healing center engagement. A key part of this, in addition to teaching kids every day in interactions, trauma informed, and teach students about trauma, but teaching resilience step by step. And one of the keys to teaching resilience is speaking up and sharing power, this idea of dreaming and imagining. And it's an important ingredient, as Dr. Ginwright states in the future of healing, when he said, it's the ability to acknowledge the harm and injury, but not be defined by it, and see beyond the condition, event, or the situation that caused the trauma in the first place. And so an important factor in fostering hopefulness as well as an optimism is both to contribute to the overall well-being and empower our students to be able to take a look at these issues and not be victims, but to say, hey, wait, we can do something about that. So I'll give you an example of that in our next slide. For years, Ray was talking about, the mobile parks that feed into the Elk Grove community. It's pretty extensive. 500 and maybe 20 students out of our 1,500 here, Ray, are coming in from the mobile park?
Yes.
Mobile homes. So for years in this community, they've not been able to access library services. And adults have tried and failed because they have their own independent library board. And we even tried to get the help of our superintendent. He wasn't able to do it. And but our kids kept working at this. And through our union partnerships with our political connections, we were able to get Senator Murphy. And working with Senator Murphy, we invited her in, and the students presented the information to them about lack of access. And she was able to pass legislation that would now waive the library fee access. Now, it's one thing to pass a bill, it's another one to actually get it implemented. And believe it or not, in May, when this was passed, we still haven't gotten it implemented here, but we're working on that with other libraries to make sure that happens. So this is a perfect example of saying, look, we don't have to sit by and take the inequities of the system. We can engage you in the classroom, and through engagement and partnerships with the community, with political figures, with teachers, with your union, we're throwing everything at it that we possibly can. The goal would be for the district to embrace this and obviously make this systemic. And I think that's going to be, that's both the mountain as well as the challenge, but the dream to, get to that point to where, District 189 is. So that's a little bit of our story. Again, it's a different approach, more so from maybe coming in from the outside in, bringing these pieces into place, and then being able to say, let's keep working at it. Let's connect through these networks that you see through here. And whether it's unions or partnerships like this, we're all in this work together to provide our children with the best learning environment possible. And on behalf of Ray and I, we thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much to our presenters. But if there are any questions, we are happy to take them.
And I'll just echo Tiffany's question that she put in the chat box, which is that East St. Louis, and I imagine 214 as well as other districts on the line, would love any suggestions or thoughts that folks might have as well. to continue to deepen and enhance the work.
Well, I would offer right now to District 189, when we get things back in order, wouldn't it be rich if we did an exchange to bring kids and really understand both sides of this when they can see both coins? So we did something like that with Peatone in the school there because they wanted to build the third airport when they were talking about airport expansion. So that was a very interesting exploration of inequities as well as opportunities to get into the fight to maybe bring that third airport to Peatone. So there's all kinds of ways you can do this would tie into civic education. So we'll definitely explore that.
So there's a question in the chat. Could you confirm if staff were initially trained in ACA interface? We are currently using it with U46 teachers, staff, and the community.
District 214 is using the model from the IFT trauma informed. So we are not using the ACE interface.
There's also a question in the Q&A saying, does anyone work with the Attorney General's office to help families with the CVR applications?
We are doing we help families complete the application, to gather all their documents and complete the application.
And East St. Louis also used the same model as 214 with the ACE. We did not use the interface.
We're here if you guys want to ask us questions. And I'll just add though to, you know, social work 101, you want to build relationships, right? But there are inequities. Even in our Elk Grove High School, as we stated, there's mobile homes and there's very affluential homes as well. So we get those students. So that was a barrier. And the way that we broke that barrier was by going to the mobile homes. So every other Saturday, a team goes out there and sets up camp at one of the mobile homes, the largest one, which is pretty much centralized, excuse me. And we offer services to them as opposed to the parents having to come into the school to do parent-teacher conferences, for example. We set up with a hotspot. We can check grades for parents and students. We can sign them up on free and reduced. We can sign them up for any initiatives that are taking place. And there's a team that, well, not with COVID, there's a team that would stay there, and then another team that would jump in our van and literally go do home visits. And those home visits were students that were failing classes, had difficulties with attendance, anything like that. And the other thing we also did is our incoming, during the summer, we have summer camps that we invite our incoming 8th graders, and we do the home visits for them to welcome the new freshmen as well.
And one of the things we discovered with this return back to school, there were, depending on where you lived and what zip code, there were folks that wanted to have a full return and wouldn't stop at anything else. We realized that we're having some challenges in building relationships with parents. So through the result of parent-teacher home visits, some training we received, we're going to try to strengthen that area of need up in the coming months to train other teachers, and then hopefully this summer start taking this into communities and start building partnerships between teachers and parents. They also offer virtual home visits that we're exploring as well.
I just wanted to add something about the COVID situation and all the training that we've gone through. All the things that we've learned through our training, the networking the district has done, the work that Ms. Granger and her church has done with the district, it has allowed the teachers to have the resources that we need to know about. There's the networking to know about. A parent tells us, or we're in their homes in this remote learning, and they reach out to us, and this is just, something has just happened. We now have hope. We can give them hope. We can tell them, here is the number. We need you to reach out to this person, or we reach out to our the resources ourselves, and we have them contact the parents. Whereas before we were like, where do we go? What do we do? And now we have those things set up and those helps for those parents already set up. So it's quick right there at our fingertips, and it's make going through the situation a lot easier. And I thank Dr. Goldstein and her team for and the Granger Church for a lot of that.
If I could just build off that, that's huge. I mean, we learned in March, you know, that our parents are going to be the critical component of any kind of remote learning. And how do we bring them the skills, and how do we partner up with them? I don't think we solved that problem in the summer or the fall, and we're going to have to. I think we're going to have to do a better job in that arena if we're really going to be able to provide students or parents with, you know, this idea that they can be partners and we can do this successfully. So another challenge.